Hey, it's Pastor Isaiah with Black Church Chats. It has been a long day. It's Sunday. I have been preaching today. I went to another service where I was asked to give the prayer. I've been on a number of phone calls, and so my voice is a little raspy. It's a little rough, but nonetheless, I wanted to record this today because I don't know when I'll be able to get back to it. So I am on recording now because I think it's important for me to address um, what I've been discussing now for the past few days. So if you've been tuning in to uh, my podcast or following me, then you know that I have been in dialogue. Well, not really in dialogue, but you know that I responded to a broadcast that April Chapman did regarding the Black church. And April sort of responded. She responded without saying my name. It was clear that she was talking about me, and we'll see that in just a second. But she did respond, and so I wanted to come on and respond to her response. Now I have to be honest with you. When I heard April's response, I was just a bit disappointed. Um, I was disappointed and I was saddened as well because I really thought April would be a little bit more objective. Let me tell you why I decided to address April because others of her ilk are going after the Black church as well. Corey Minor, K Dub, others attack the Black church unfairly, criticize the Black church unfairly. And I could have easily, addressed them rather than her. So let me tell you one of the reasons why I addressed April. I don't know Corey Minor, the smart Christian guy. I don't know him. Never met him. Never spoke. I know people that know him. I don't know him personally. Um, and this is just how he comes across to me. I could be wrong. I could be. I am admitting that this could be a bad assessment, but this is how he comes across to me. He doesn't strike me as somebody that is open to learning. I know his podcast is called The Smart Christian, which implies I don't know why he named it that, but it seems like to me it seems like that implies that he feels he's already smart enough. And he kind of he exudes that, in my opinion, on his podcast. And I'm not really into talking to brick walls. I reached out to somebody that knows him a while back because I was open. I wanted to talk to him about some of the stuff he was saying about the Black church. So I reached out to somebody that knows him a while back, and that person didn't even respond. Completely ignored it. And so after that whole thing, I continued to kind of listen a little bit to him, watch him a little bit, and he just struck me. I was actually glad because he just struck me as somebody that's not really wanting to learn or open to dialogue where he potentially admits he was wrong. I could be wrong, but that's just my assessment. K Dub, in my experience with him, he's proven to me, at least in my experience with him, he's proven to me to be dishonest. Okay. I know others that have worked with him far more closely than I have, and they would actually go further and say a lot more about that and about his character. In my interactions with him, K Dub has proven to me to be, in my experience, to be a dishonest person. So I'm not going to address K Dub or respond to anything that K Dub has to say because I don't think that K Dub is really a fair dealing person. April, on the other hand, remember I knew April at one point, and remember I told you April was wonderful when I knew her. She was great. April is very down to earth, easy to talk to, approachable, humble. When I knew April, she's a great person. And I based my approaching her and addressing her, I based that upon what I knew about her. And I thought, maybe I was wrong, maybe I made a bad assessment here, but I thought that she would be more inclined to hear. I thought that she would be less likely to just reflexively reject what I was saying. I thought that she'd be more likely to sit back and say, I may not agree with all of it, but maybe there are some nuggets here that I can take back with me. I was disappointed in her response. And so we're going to review her response now. So just give me a second. Let me get this set up. And we're going to take a look at April's response. Give me a second.
Welcome back to the Standard of Truth podcast, soon to be Unshakable with April Chapman. Here's where we talk about all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. And today, you guys, we need to have a heart-to-heart talk. This has been an amazing last couple of days, and I've obviously stirred up quite the hornet's nest with some of my commentary lately on the theological side of the spectrum. I want to say it may have been maybe a week ago.
So let me just stop right there. Her comments, the ones I addressed, they weren't just on the theological side of the spectrum. She also got into history. So call it historical theology if you want to call it historical theology. I wouldn't go that far with it, but it wasn't just straight theological commentary. She brought up some history. She talked about history as well. And in the portion that I responded to specifically, she didn't mention one particular doctrine. She didn't mention one particular tenet of the prosperity gospel. She didn't mention one particular theological perspective that the Black church holds to, that we have allegedly abandoned. She's calling it theological commentary, but it wasn't just that. I would argue that it really wasn't that. It was more historical commentary, and she was using the history in her mind as a way to explain why the Black church is what it is today. Okay, so it wasn't just a theological conversation.
Political commentator and YouTuber and podcaster and author Allie Beth Stuckey recently had a guest on her show, Melissa Darty, who is a Christian apologist, both of which I followed their work for quite some time. Black people were mentioned, y'all. Black people were mentioned. I've already covered it. If you haven't had an opportunity, go back and watch that video. I provided extensive commentary based on the contextual framework of that conversation. And I lent my 2 cents to the discussion. And I did the unthinkable. You guys. You know, I mentioned some of the pro-blackity blacks and the woke justicians. And yes, I'm using that terminology to describe how they are more known for that than they are for their sound doctrine and theological prowess.
How they are more known for that. By who? I understand that the people within your echo chamber think that guys like me are ethnic narcissists, idolize our blackness, And here again, you're making another broad statement. They are known for. Talk to the pastors that I'm in fellowship with. Ask them if I'm theologically sound. Ask them if I preach the gospel. Ask them if I painstakingly, to the best of my ability, exegete scripture. This is one of the problems with, in my opinion, with reformed culture. This epistemological superiority, because we know them as this in our echo chambers. This is what they're known as, and so all of April's audience will shake their head. Oh, I guess that's what they're known as. All of April's people will say, yeah, that's what they're known as. But when you step outside of their echo chambers, you'll discover that that's not what we're known as. That's what we're known as by them. And honestly, they're known as stuff by us too, right? So you go to the other side of the aisle, and there are some uncharitable ways that we perceive them as well, and some of the ways we perceive them is correct. Some of it is not. But in within her echo chamber, yes, they know guys like myself as a social justician who idolizes blackness, who bows down to the altar of black identity and not theologically sound, not preaching the gospel, blah, 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 blah. And so what that does is that scares their audience from even hearing us. It poisons the well, and it scares her listeners from even, oh, these guys are known as that by who? Your group. Not by you. You get outside of your bubble, outside of your echo chamber, the people that actually know me and know others that have that share my same views, you'll discover that you're wrong.
Why? Because everything they view is through this lens of melanin. And I said that it is a stumbling block. I said the blackness is a stumbling block. And to make it equally provocative, whiteness can be a stumbling block too. Now, most of the people in my circle, they look like me. It's proximity. Now, I have relationships across all ethnic spectrums. I've got white friends, Indian friends, and Asian friends. I've got friends of all different types of ethnicities. However, the people, now I can't really say the people that are closest to me, because it's kind of like a mix, kind of down the middle. One of my besties from church, is a person of color, Sister Ann, who I love dearly. And then my bestie Keisha is a black woman. And then members of, my team that help work with me behind the scenes here at Standard House Media, they're black. So, I don't feel as if I need to give any sort of disclaimers or any sort of evidence to prove my blackness, right? However, if needed, I can do that. But what I want to
Listen, I just have to bring this up. Some of you guys may think this is a petty point. I don't care. I have to bring this up. It is interesting that she prefaced that statement. I don't have to prove my blackness by essentially saying, I know black people. I have black friends. I employ black people. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? When, our beautiful white siblings try to prove that they actually aren't racist or they love black people, what do they say? I have black friends. I work with a black guy. Sounds kind of similar. I know that's a little petty point to pull out, but I don't know if you caught that. She prefaced her statement, I'd have to prove my blackness. Why? Because I have black friends and I employ black people. I don't have time to get it. Okay. All right. Some of y'all get it. Some of y'all just, but okay.
to talk about today is there are certain individuals, and we're not gonna waste time going through naming names. They would love for me to mention their name, but we're not going to do that today. But what we are going to do is deal with the claims that were made based on what I said. Now, I know what they heard, but what I said is what I am going to double down on and defend today. What I said was that Allie Beth Stuckey didn't say anything wrong in her observation of the ethnic expression of the Black church in a huge majority of churches. Not all, not all. It was obvious that she was not saying all, but in most of the churches today, we do see a heavy emphasis on prosperity, and we also see a lot of other bad doctrinal positions that are actively promoted in a lot of our churches. Now, the same can be said for white evangelical as white.
Now, let's think together. Okay? Let's think together. All right? Because again, huge majority, most. These are the words that she's throwing around. Huge majority, most. She's gonna go on to say, I don't need to have data. I see it with my eyes. Remember, in my response to her, I provided where's the book? Where is it? Here it is. I provided a report which gives empirical data, hard numbers to support the vibrancy and the strength of the majority of the Black church spiritually. Okay, the hard numbers that completely contradicts the narrative that April and others are spinning. Hard numbers. She spins back around and doubles down, and it uses the same language. Most, huge majority. And here's where the problem lies. This is one of the reasons why it is hard to take some Black conservatives seriously. This is why. I've had multiple conversations with Black conservatives, and I'll say something like, of course, the police force in America is an oppressive force in Black communities. Of course, police brutality and racial profiling still exist, and many Black people experience it. Of course, if you give a sinner a badge and a gun, they are going to exert that authority sinfully. Of course. You know what a lot of Black conservatives have said to me? They put on their Ben Shapiro hats, and you know what they say to me? That's not what the numbers say. It's not what the data suggests. Let's talk about who's actually beaten by police. Let's talk about the numbers. Let's crunch them. Let's see. Let's pull up this stat and let's pull up that stat to try to debunk my claim that police presence is often oppressive in communities of color. They'll say, no, let's look at the data. And then if I respond by saying, okay, can we put the data away for just a second? I'm talking about the experiences of Black people in these communities. You talk to multiple Black people. You talk to them about Vadi Bakum, for goodness sakes, has a story about how he was mistreated by police growing up here in South Central LA. I mean, come on, y'all. You can talk to Black people from different states, of different ages, of different socioeconomic statuses, and they all have similar stories of oppressive policing in Black communities. And you know what the Black conservatives say? You can't base what you believe off of what's observable, off of their experiences. Here's the data. But now all of a sudden, when it comes to the black church, let's not even consider the Barna report, which gives empirical data. Let's just take April's word for it. Let's just take Corey Miner's word for it. I don't have any observable data when it comes to what I'm claiming. Just look out and see. Isn't that the same thing that we say when it comes to police brutality and oppressive policing in black communities? This is why it is hard to take y'all seriously, because y'all will pick and choose when data is important. Y'all will pick and choose when numbers are important. And when it suits you, you will discount the experience and the experiences of a vast majority of people because of data. Now, of course, if you point to the common culprits, it seems as though it's the vast majority. When these people talk about the black church, who are they normally highlighting? Jamal Harrison Bryant, William Murphy. When you focus on that segment, and that's what you show your audience over and over again ad nauseum, then that's going to create the perspective that it is that's going to create the appearance that it is the vast majority and most. Numbers don't lie, though. And so I may not get through to April, but if you are one of April's fans, if you're part of her audience, April may not dig in, but will you buy this? And will you look at this? And will you research this? And will you see what Barna has to say about the black church versus just taking their word for it? Let's continue.
Evangelicalism as well, because I said in my video, it's just hard to find a good church, period, let alone trying to drill down into the weeds and find a black church. But what I said it's not that what Allie Beth Stuckey said was wrong. No, the issue is that she's white. And so for me as a black woman to actually comment on what she said concerning black people or the black church or however you want to describe it, for me to come in and then affirm what she said, some individuals felt that I was caping for the white man. I was just promoting, white nationalist talking points or white conservative Republican talking points.
So I hope you're paying attention. This, my friends, is called deflection. This is called shifting the goalpost. This is straw manning 101. What she's saying is the real reason why I'm mad, or you're mad, or we're angry, is because she had the audacity to agree with a white person regarding something pertaining to the black church. And because we are ethnic Gnostics and ethnic narcissists, and because we bow down to the idol of blackness, our real frustration is really around her agreeing with what a white person had to say about the black church. And that's really why we're mad. Because because in our minds, white people can't say nothing about black people or black culture or black anything without us getting mad. So that's why we're really angry because she had the audacity and the unmitigated gall to agree with white people in an assessment they made about the black church. I don't know if April knows she's deflecting and she's doing it purposefully because she doesn't actually want to address the substance of what I said. Or if she really honestly thinks that's why we're upset. And yes, I'm saying we're because I'm one in a number. I'm one voice in a chorus of people that are like, these people are nuts. I'm gonna show you a real quick clip. I created this clip 7 months ago, before the Allie Beth Stuckey controversy, before all of that happened. 7 months ago, I said this. Check this out.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to Black Church Chats. I'm your host, Pastor Isaiah Robertson. This is the podcast where we seek to define, discuss, and defend the Black church for her future flourishing. Please like, share, and subscribe. Certainly want to get this content out. Please help us to do that. But I'm gonna jump right in. I'm not gonna keep you on too long. But there's something that I've been thinking about that's been causing me consternation. And I guess the way that I want to set this up is by sort of giving a scenario. You have a mom. And I don't necessarily know what your relationship is like with your mom. I don't know if it's a good relationship. I don't know if it's a negative relationship, but you have a mother. And let's just say that you have a wonderful, beautiful, loving relationship with your mother. Okay. So if you don't, then in this scenario, you do. You have a wonderful, beautiful, loving relationship with your mother. However, let's say that your mother, she's accumulated some enemies along the way. For whatever reason, there are people that just don't like your mother. They don't feel fond feelings toward your mother. Now, when those people critique your mother, you already understand that their critique is going to be filtered through their lens of her, and it's going to be filtered through their personal feelings of her. Does not necessarily mean that their critiques are wrong. Does not necessarily mean that their critiques are completely off base. It just means that when her enemies critique her, when the people that don't like her critique her, then you have to take that into account as you're listening to their critique. You have to, as you're listening to their critique, understand that they're not necessarily objective observers. They may be just trying to tear your mother down. They may be just trying to cast aspersions upon her so other people think negatively of her. Doesn't mean that's always the case, but if your mother is critiqued by her enemies, by the people that don't like her, then it's probably the case that their critique is filtered through that antipathy and animosity, and you have to understand that as you're listening to the critique. On the flip side, though, you love your mother. You have a wonderful relationship with your mother. You understand that your mother is not perfect. However, you love your mother, and you generally seek the well-being of your mother. When you critique her, though the critique may be harsh, though the critique may be accurate, though the critique may be uncomfortable, when you critique her, though, your critique is coming from what? A place of love, a place of desiring to see the best in her and from her. All right. Your critique is not being leveled for the purpose of bringing scorn, shame, and ultimate disavowal of her. But your critique is you just know she can do better. You want to see her do better. You love her though. And your critique is meant to really spur her on to growth and flourishing. Why do I bring up this scenario? It's a lot of people out there right now in YouTube world and otherwise critiquing the black church. A lot of people. A lot of people have built platforms upon critiquing the black church. A lot of people. And many of them are not critiquing the black church from a place of affection, affinity, or love. Many of them are like the enemies of your mother in that scenario. And they're critiquing the black church, but they are critiquing the black church. All of that critique is being filtered through their animosity towards antipathy for the black church. For whatever reason, they just don't like the black church. For whatever reason, they're just not rocking with the black church. They are actually, they would never say this out loud. They would never say this publicly, but they are actually opposed to the black church, but they are critiquing the black church as if they are objective observers. And what people do is they listen to these podcasters and others, and they don't take into account that this critique is not objective. They don't take into account the fact that this critique is coming from a place of animosity and disdain. And they listen as though these people are experts. They listen as though these people are objective. And that is frustrating me.
7 months ago, I recorded that. Before Allie Beth Stuckey, before that conversation, I was growing more and more frustrated with the mischaracterizations, the shaming, the overgeneralizations, the uncharitable rhetoric that you and others spew about the black church on a regular basis. April, I do not watch your content. I don't watch the Smart Christian's content. I feel like I grow dumber as I watch his content. I don't watch K-Dub's content. The only times I lean in is when the black church is being discussed. Because I want to hear, how are they going to represent the black church? How are they going to speak about the black church? What are they going to say about the black church? Are they going to be gracious? Are they going to be charitable? I mean, it's already clear that they're black conservatives. And there's already sort of a kind of a divide there politically because the overwhelming majority of black parishioners are not, they may be conservative ideologically, but they don't vote Republican. And so I sit back and I listen. Are they going to be charitable? Are they have an axe to grind? Are they going to grind it objectively? And without fail, every time I've listened, it is the same unloving, uncharitable attacks and vitriol and disdain that exudes and comes from their mouth. And I've grown frustrated. It has nothing to do with agreeing with white folks. I agree with white folks when they're right. When they're wrong, I don't agree. I agree with black folks when they're right. When they're wrong, I don't agree. And what you're doing, April, is agreeing with a white person that is wrong. If she was right, then more power to you and her. It hasn't. You are deflecting. And I may not be able to get to you, April, but prayerfully, hopefully I can get to some of your listeners. This is just not somebody you can trust to be an honest dealer when it comes to assessing the black church. She's clearly either willfully ignoring the substance of what I said, or she really thinks that that's why we're upset. And if she thinks that that's why we're upset, it's a bigger indictment upon her than it is upon us, because that means that she's not self-aware enough to know that her own rhetoric regarding the black church is trash. Just trash.
Yada yada yada. I'm still confused because and maybe I don't want to misrepresent. So if I'm misrepresenting, we can go back and correct this later. But this wasn't even a political discussion. This was a theological discussion. And I don't know why I thought this, but I thought in a theological discussion with the people of God that the word of God would be primary and that our unity on the basis of what Christ has accomplished for us. I thought, I don't know, that we would all have agreement in the statements that are objectively true.
So do you hear the condescension dripping? It's unfortunate because it's almost as if she's saying, if I am saying that the conversation is theological, then based on my claim that the conversation is theological, just ignore what I say about history, because the conversation is theological. So only focus on what I say about theology and just ignore all of the blatantly false things that I say about history. Two things can be true at the same time. You can have a theological conversation and still get it wrong in some of the claims that you make, particularly when you delve into history. And the bigger issue is her warped understanding of black church history has led her to reach a conclusion about why the black church is the way that it is today. And so it wouldn't be so frustrating if she was just wrong with her history, but she uses incorrect history to reach conclusions about the black church and why it is the way it is today. So guess what? If the root is polluted, the fruit is going to be polluted too. And so I am endeavoring to correct her history. Has nothing to do with you agreeing with white folks. You are uncharitable, unloving toward this segment of Christ's body because you have some skewed views of history that inform the way you're viewing this segment of Christ's universal body. And so let's not be disingenuous. In a theological conversation, you can still make a lot of misstatements and you can still offer a lot of inaccurate claims. It wasn't just a theological conversation, it was a historical conversation.
Even if it means that it's going to cause our cultural identities to be viewed in a negative light. I always thought that our people were the ones who do the will of the Father, right? I didn't know that there was this ethnic solidarity that I was supposed to exhibit. I had not gotten the memo.
You are supposed to show solidarity to the truth. Do you see the deflection here? Oh, You just mad at me because I'm agreeing with a white person and I didn't know that I was just supposed to show solidarity to blackness. No, show solidarity to the truth. Show solidarity to accuracy. Show solidarity to being charitable. That's what we're wanting you to show you and others to show solidarity to. I know that you're capable of it. I don't know about Minor and I don't know about K-Dub, but April, I don't know. I felt like I knew you at one point. I do. Felt like I knew you at one point. I'm not, it's not about, listen, you can have at it. With all of your conservative ideology, have at it. You have to show solidarity to anybody. Show solidarity to the truth. And to being accurate. And to being careful and to being charitable.
That if I agreed with a white woman, that I would be the enemy to black people. And so here's what I want to actually say. The individual who's gone on a mission to educate me and to enlighten me about the richness of Dear Mother Black Church assumes that I don't know the richness and the history of the Dear Mother Black Church.
I don't assume it. I don't assume it, April. I've been listening to you as it pertains to the black church, your commentary on the black church. And it's clear that you don't know. I don't assume it. If I was to say to you, and by you I mean the audience, not necessarily April, the audience, if you're a sports fan, this analogy might grab you. April may be a sports fan. I don't know. But if I was to say to you, man, the Showtime era began in LA the moment Shaq left the Magic and joined the Lakers. And that's when you see the shift, and that's when the Showtime era really takes off. What? And that Showtime era with Shaq and Kobe, that Showtime era was something, wasn't it? If you heard me say that, now I'm talking to my sports aficionados, my basketball aficionados. If you heard me say that, you in your, what would you think in your mind? You would think to yourself, this dude don't know, he don't know nothing about Laker history. This dude, what do you mean Showtime began with Shaq? What? It was Showtime before Shaq was even thought of. Like, what is this guy talking about? Now, if you tried to correct me and say, hey, actually, you're speaking of the history wrong. It's actually, Showtime is Magic and Cooper and Worthy and, that's, and Kareem, that's the Showtime era. Shaq comes and you get the Lake Show. What if I said to you, I know Laker history. Do you assume to educate me on Laker history? You'd be like, all right, bro. I guess I can't reach you. And that's the way I'm feeling about April. I can't reach her. I don't have to assume that you don't know black church history. I've listened to you. In the broadcast that I responded to, April, you said this.
And then I know y'all really ain't gonna like this, but it's just the fact. The civil rights movement marked a significant turning point where the mission of the church, it started to shift away from making disciples and preaching the gospel to becoming this hub for social activism. And so what we saw during the entire 19th century, churches just allowed their theological convictions to be overshadowed by political concerns, cultural concerns, and financial concerns.
Anyone that knows a shred, a modicum, a tiny amount of Black church history could automatically listen to what April Chapman just said there and be like, whoa, whoa. Did she just say that the civil rights movement was a huge shift and the Black church's activism started there? Whoa. Is she really trying to say that the civil rights movement has something to do with the Black church's embrace of the prosperity gospel? Whoa, is she trying to say that the civil rights movement marks the theological shift away from biblical fidelity and toward the prosperity? Whoa. Is she trying to say that the Black church prior to the civil rights movement did never engage in activism, social justice, fighting for the marginalized? If you have an ounce of knowledge when it comes to Black church history, you pick up on it. So when you hear her say that, we don't have to assume, because she would never say something like that if she knew Black church history. She may think she knows Black church history. Let me I want to take you on a walk down memory lane. I used to think like April. I used to be right there with K-Dub, with all the reformed cabal. I was right there with them. Right there with them. Boom. Lockstep. And one day I went on Facebook. I went live on Facebook. This was years ago, and I proceeded on Facebook to just go in on quote unquote social justice warriors, the social justice movement within the church. Just went in. The echo chamber, they were applauding me, patting me on the back. You go, Isaiah. That's great. Yeah, I felt good. And then somebody called me. I'm not going to say his name. Some of you guys know this story. So some of you guys know who this person is. I'm not going to say his name. He called me. And I was actually honored. But he called me. He inboxed me first, got my number, and then he called me. I was like, whoa, he wants to talk to me? Wow. Amazing. I got on the phone with him and he said, Isaiah, and I'm of course paraphrasing, I'm truncating the story a bit. He said, Isaiah, you had a lot of good things to say in your broadcast, and you had some things that you said that I just disagree with you. But you said some things on your broadcast about the Black church. Here's his question. He said, Isaiah, how much do you know about the Black church? And do you want to know what my response was to him then? What do you mean? I grew up in the Black church, born and raised, practically born in the pews. What do you mean? What do I know about the Black church? All my life, been in the Black church. And he pushed back gently and lovingly, and he said, well, just because you grew up in it, just because you were raised in it, it doesn't necessarily mean you understand its legacy and history. He said, you could work for McDonald's for 40 years and not know any of Ray Kroc's motivations, not know any of the history. You could work for McDonald's for 40 years and not know anything about Dick and Maurice and how the franchise was started or any of that. And that's when I stopped. And I thought to myself, now I could have kept going. You assume that I don't know Black church history? That's when I stopped and I said, you're right. And he recommended a book, and that started my journey. And one book led to another book, which led to another book, which led to another book, which led to another book. And what I saw in my studies, what I saw was an amazing picture being painted of the goodness, the graciousness, and the sovereignty of God. I felt like, whoa, the story of the Black church is a great apologetic for the existence of the Christian God, because there's no other way that you can explain the enduring existence of this institution outside of the sovereignty, grace, and the goodness of God. I saw this picture and said, my goodness, What a mighty God we serve. And more people need to know this. More people need to understand this, because unfortunately, the people speaking about Black church history are all theologically liberal. I said, I ain't gonna go down that route. And unfortunately, in Reformed circles, they ain't talking about no Black church history. James White talk about Black church history. Scoff, laugh. Reformed Theological Seminary, Westminster. This is a journey that I had to take all by myself. And I took it. And as I studied and learned, it was like, man, God has always had a ram in the bush. When the American church was drunk, literally, and also metaphorically, on power and greed and barbarity and manifest destiny, God had a ram in the bush. I'm about to preach. When the church in the colonies had become more beholden to this than the God of all creation, God always had a ram in the bush. But it took for me to say, you know what? You're right. I don't know what I think I know. You're right. Maybe there's more. And that started me on my journey towards what I do today and away from the Reformed cabal, because I began to see how much misrepresentation, slander, and just uncharitable rhetoric exists around the Black church in those camps.
But that's not what this conversation was about, and how we even got into the weeds, where I had to go all the way back into the history of the Black church. I mean, I don't know how far back you want me to go. You want to talk about Athanasius and the Athanasius Creed? Like, none of that matters. All of that smoke and mirror, she's uneducated, it's just blatant ignorance. She just doesn't know. None of that had anything to do or any bearing on the state of the ethnic expression of the Black church today. You have then and you have now. And I even acknowledge that at one point, the Black church, we were a lone bulwark of truth and biblical fidelity. I acknowledge that. Maybe you skipped over that part the moment I agree with the white woman, right? But why I need to do a survey of Black church history to make a truth claim and to agree with something that someone said is beyond me.
And that's unfortunate that it's beyond you, April. That's unfortunate that really is. Because what you don't understand is what you're doing is you're using your skewed view of history to reach a conclusion about the current state of the Black church. And you're agreeing with said statement based on this skewed view. So your agreement is based on ignorance. And this is what grieves me. Listen. In this response from April, I guess I'm understanding that maybe I can't get to April. But if you're one of her followers, if you're a part of her audience, can you just step outside just for a second? Just kind of think with me. If you believe something about the past that is influencing what you're thinking about something in the present, and you are basing how you interact or talk about or engage with or deal with this thing today based on what you think about it from yesterday. Don't you think it's incumbent upon you to make sure that you have the correct information about yesterday? To ensure you're not misapplying the lesson? I mean, what are we talking about here? Don't you think that it's important for you to take inventory and say, okay, I am acting this way, or I am saying this because I believe that. So let me examine what I believe about that to ensure what I'm saying about this is accurate. Why is that lost on you or by you? It may be lost on you or by you, but I hope it's not lost on others hearing me.
But hear me clearly. This platform, all this you see right here, this platform was built by God's grace, enabling me to work by the sweat, yes, lots of sweat, of my own brow, taking said fruit of my own labor and investing it back into my own platform. I've taken no money from any rich white Republicans or conservative groups. This podcast is powered by Standard House Media. And if you check the Secretary of State's website, the organizer and member of Standard House Media is moi, April Chapman. There's been no money coming in from Blaze Media or Valuetainment or Turning Point USA or the Heritage Foundation or Hillsdale College. I mean, name whoever you want that you believe is giving me money to say the things that I say. And I can assure you that you are sadly mistaken and you're just flat out lying.
Never said that she was receiving money from any conservative organization. This is what I said was now we're going back to my Facebook Live, because before I responded to her broadcast formally, I went on Facebook just to let everybody know that I was going to be responding. And in that live, this is what I said. I said, if you want to gather an audience, if you want to grow your podcast, then be a conservative black person that talks greasy about black people and the black experience and the black church, and you will grow your podcast. I didn't say nothing about I didn't say nothing about anybody giving you money. I said what I feel is true, that if you want to amass a following, one of the quickest ways to do it, how long did it take you to reach? I said myself, like, I'm happy that you found your audience and your niche, right? The world would be a pretty boring place if only one perspective was shared. Go do your thing. I'm not talking about money being given to you. I'm talking about what I feel is true. If you want to amass a following as a black conservative person, start a podcast where you talk greasy about black people. And here's what I would love to happen. I would love for somebody to test that. I would love for somebody to test that. Right now it's a theory. I would love for somebody to test that. I would love for somebody to take two black reformed conservatives. They would have to be relatively unknown, because if they already have name recognition, then of course that is gonna, that's gonna add to their following. So they have to be relatively unknown. Two black reformed conservatives. and they each start a podcast at the same time. And one black reform conservative, their podcast is about, let's say, the five solas, or let's say the Calvinism, Calvinistic soteriology. Okay, and that is all they talk about. That's all they focus on. That's all they do. They don't go off into talking about the black church. They don't go off into talking about how Martin Luther King was a heretic. They don't get off into disparaging people as, social justicians and wokety wokes and blackety black blacks and whatever. They just talk about the solas. They talk about reform soteriology. And then you take the other guy. He starts a podcast at the exact same time, and he does what April does, what K-Dub does, what Corey Minor does. And we just watch to see whose platform grows. Now, let's just assume that they come out with content at the same time. Their marketing is at the same level. So let's just assume they're both putting the same amount of effort. Be interesting to see. If somebody can test this, if somebody can do this, here's what I'd be willing to do. Here's what I'd be willing to do. If somebody could to test that over 6 months, and my theory proves to be wrong, and the Sola guy has more subscribers and followers than the talk greasy about black folks guy, then I will wear MAGA attire for a month. You hear me say it right now. If somebody, I don't know how we can do some type of experiment like that. But I think that'd be an interesting experiment. So that's what I said. I never claimed that you were getting money. I just said that you talk greasy about black people, and white conservatives are going to eat that up. And black conservatives are going to feel like, yes, somebody else that thinks like me.
You have no idea how hard I have worked these past 3 years to build what I am building here, and we are still building it. There are still things that I want to do, projects that I want to work on, and I have no problem funding said projects myself. See, I don't need to cape for the white man and to say the things that I say to gain their approval. Why? Because I do what I do for an audience of one, and everyone out there that happens to watch me happens to be spectators into that. The audience of one, which is the Lord Jesus, is all that matters to me. And pleasing him above all others is what matters to me.
It's pleasing him to be charitable. It's pleasing him to be truthful. It's pleasing him to be careful with your rhetoric, particularly as it pertains to his church. Do you agree that the black church is actually a segment of Christ's universal body? And do you think that when you, just because you feel like it, cast aspersions and broad brush the vast majority of this segment, do you think that that's charitable and loving? Do you really think? Now, again, you're only making these claims because you feel like it. You don't have anything to support your claims. You don't have anything to back up what you're saying as it pertains to the vast majority. Yes, the prosperity gospel is a problem in some black churches. Yes, there is doctrinal error. And yes, and we need to fight against it and we need to call it out. But you don't do that by broad brushing. I am a pastor of a black church, fellowship with multiple black churches, and I have the data to prove what you're saying is false. It's not the vast majority. It's a good amount. Too many. Not the vast majority.
And if standing in solidarity based on a truth claim that a sister in Christ made who happens to be white makes me a sellout, coon, bootlicking Uncle Tom, then I'll be that, because I've been called worse by somebody better. But what I will not do is allow you to think that you can come over to this side of the YouTube streets and levy and hurl accusations toward me about things that you know nothing about. I don't know why y'all think that Black folks can't build and acquire and do things without the white man stepping in to help.
She's angry about levying accusations that I don't know nothing about. Isn't that why I chose to respond to her? Because that's what she does every time she talks about the Black church. Irony. Mad at me because she feels like I am leveling accusations. I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, April, that's the pot calling the kettle. That's what you do every time you come on your broadcast and talk about the Black church. Every single time. You level accusations and you don't know what you're talking about. And that's what I addressed and responded. Everything else you're doing is a red herring. Everything else you're doing is you're going off on a rabbit trail. I am not coming after your platform. God bless your platform. Take your platform, have it, have fun. I am not coming. You gonna say some other things here in just a second about my motivations? Have it, do it. Go, have your fun. Say it and say everything you want to say. I'm just trying to hold you to account for doing exactly what you claim that I'm doing to you, which is making accusations and you don't know what you're talking about. You just don't know what you're talking about. And it'll be much better for you to say, you know what, maybe on some things he's right, versus doubling down as you're doing. I don't want to call it prideful. I don't know your heart, but man, this sounds like, ooh, this is, and you're going to say some things later that sounds like just pride. Like, I have 100,000 followers and I built this, and you're doing it for an audience of one, but you got a lot of eyes in there. A lot of eyes. Again, I don't know you anymore. I used to. And when I knew you, you seemed to be to me the very humble, very kind, very open person.
Could it be that the reason why the individuals who once thought just like I did, and we were of the same mind, the mind of Christ, mind you, and we held to these conservative values in harmony with one another, because you couldn't get the opportunities that you believed you deserved over on the more conservative, whitewashed, as you would call it, side of evangelicalism, because you couldn't get what you wanted over there. You ran to the missionary Black church who hired you. And so to be over there, now you have to be a pro Blackity Black. And now you have to be quoting James Cone and caping for Kamala Harris. I don't know.
So yeah, she doesn't mention my name in her response, but that's how you know she's talking about me. Okay. Because I was once seduced by Reformed culture, thought the same way she did, and then I left and I became pastor at a missionary Baptist church. As a matter of fact, when I became the pastor of Macedonia, I hadn't fully left the Reformed cabal. Okay, so that, but notice the condescension. Maybe what you're really mad about is you was over here. We were the same mind. Notice that she says the mind of Christ. She conflates her conservative values with the mind of Christ, which begs the question. So, well, there are a lot of people that agree with you politically, April, that I don't think that you would say they have the mind of Christ. I can name probably 5 prosperity preachers off the top of my head right now that are probably more conservative than you. You wouldn't say they have the mind of Christ. So do you have the mind of Christ because you're conservative politically? Is that the standard? Is that how we determine who has the mind of Christ? Because if that's the case, then we should have another conversation about the prosperity gospel and who's promoting it, because you just implied that all of them got the mind of Christ because they share your conservative values. But notice what she's trying to say is, yeah, you just bear. If I would have stayed in that camp, in that cabal, then I'd have 100,000 followers. I'd have 500,000 followers. I'd have maybe even 1 million followers. Boy, do you remember those broadcasts, April? You were on some of those broadcasts with me, talking greasy about the black church at G3. You remember how many people came on that? Do you remember how deep? Hey, let's take it all the way back at G3. I struck up a conversation at G3 with a gentleman that was making a documentary about Calvinism. And we got to talking about social justice. And he was making a documentary about Calvinism. And again, we got to talking about social justice. And he apparently liked my views, so much so that he puts me in the documentary. Some of y'all know what documentary I'm talking about. I was in that documentary. Probably had been a Calvinist for no more than 6-7 months, if that. I don't know. Maybe a little more. I don't know. I can't remember. It's foggy. And he puts me in his documentary, which has national distribution. This thing comes out. It was a big deal back then. If I would have stayed, don't know. I didn't leave the Reform Cabal because I wasn't getting opportunities. I was getting opportunities. Then I would have continued to get opportunities. I left because I saw how uncharitable, unloving, unkind the culture is, which is what you're demonstrating.
All I'm saying is I've been consistent. You knew me as a conservative. I am still a conservative, but I am a Christian first. So if a Christian makes a statement and articulates a truth claim that can be proven to be true, I don't know. How do we know this? Look at the outcomes. Look at the outcomes. The ethnic expression of the black church that I am overly critical of are the apostates.
Wait. So now the expressions that she's critical of are the apostates. That's not what you said, April. Just even at the beginning of this particular broadcast. You said the vast majority, the overwhelming majority. So which one is it? Is it the overwhelming majority or the apostates? Are you implying that the overwhelming majority of black churches are apostate churches? If that's what you believe, say it with your chest. Say it with your chest. Say, yes, that's what I believe. I believe that the overwhelming majority of churches that are attended by majority black people with the black pastor, and we'd have to get into discussing the definition of black church and all that stuff. But just say it with your chest, yes. Okay, if that's what you believe, then just own that. It's not true, but just own that. You admit it. I don't have any data. Look at the outcomes. Yes, look at the outcomes. Look at the outcomes. You don't have any data, April, but I do. And I'd be happy to purchase you a copy of this. I pray you'll pore over this. You don't have any data. You don't have any outcomes. You know what you have? raw opinion, and you're entitled to your opinion. But don't try to pass your opinion off as fact and shove it down the throats of those that actually know. You can shove it down the throats of your people, your followers, your subscribers. But for those of us that actually know, we flag on the play. Hold up. Simmer down.
I have so many biblically sound black male pastors as friends. These men labor in the preaching and teaching ministries at their church, and they're going to get the unfading crown of glory when the Lord calls them home. They know I'm not talking about them when I talk about the black church, but somehow that distinction is lost on you because, one, you don't watch my content. You have no interest in watching my content, but you assume because you know my worldview that my content is doing A when it's actually doing B. I am critical of apostasy. And if I see my people being destroyed by a proliferation of said apostasy, do you not think it's incumbent upon me, if I have a voice and a platform that people are listening to me, that I should be warning people to mark and avoid the divisive rhetoric that's coming out of Jamal Bryant's church?
There you have it. Who does she hold up as an example? Jamal Bryant. So what she wants you to do now, again, there's agreement here. Go after the apostates. Yes, mark and avoid. Call out those that have embraced heresy, false doctrine, prosperity gospel. April, I'm with you. Theologically sound. If you know about my ministry, you know it's about being theologically sound. You know it's about standing against theological liberalism. You know it's about opposing the prosperity gospel. You know it's about gospel fidelity. You know, if you know anything about my ministry, then you know that I'm all about that. The problem comes when you widen your scope too far. And now you start shooting at the non-apostates. Yeah, your pastor friends may know you're not talking about them because they know you. But if I tell the pastors within my Baptist association to listen to your rhetoric around the black church, they don't think you're talking about them. Man, I'm with you when it comes to fighting false doctrine. That has been my second book, Risks We Must Take. In my second book, Risks We Must Take, you know what I say? I advocate for black pastors to stop inviting popular preachers behind their pulpits if they're theologically liberal. You know how unpopular that is in certain black church circles? Because you know there are theologically liberal voices that have ascended and they can dump the house and they can go. And the preacher reciprocity is, I preach for you, you preach for me. And you know, I wrote a whole book, a whole chapter in a book about ending that practice. It doesn't matter how good they moan, how good they shout, how good they hoop. Don't invite them. So that puts me in the crosshairs, even as somebody that like I'm on the outs with some of the black church because of that. So I'm with you. What I'm not with you on, again, is when you widen your scope and you close your eyes and you just start spraying the shotgun irresponsibly. You close your eyes, you just start spraying. Vast majority. So the vast majority are apostates? Is that what you're saying? What I'm asking you to do, April, is set your scope. What I'm asking you to do, April, is narrow in. What I'm asking you to do, April, is to be charitable and speak about the Black church in the same way you would want non-reformed people to speak about reformed people.
You don't think that it is a God-honoring pursuit to tell people that the prosperity gospel is trash and it wrecked my life and it'll wreck yours too? You don't think that I should be pointing out the fact that Black liberation theology is a heresy and it will send you to hell because Christ did not come to free you from the liberation of the oppressive white supremacist system, but that he came to free you from the bondage of your sin because sin is your problem? So you can have all the smoke that you want, and you can claim that you got to do some education. You know, over here's the miseducation of the Negro. I don't know, but listen, you and your 180 subscribers can stay all the way over there doing what you've been doing for the past 4 years, which is be racist and divisive. And listen.
So that's how you know that she is responding to me without saying my name, because at the time that I uploaded my response to her, I had 180 followers. And again, this is why I use that P word, that pride word, because when you start like, oh, you got only 180 followers, I got 100,000 followers, as if that means that you're an authority. Because anybody, listen, Michael Todd has far more followers than you. Gorilla Hebrew, Tazariak. Followers does not make you an authority. Followers does not make you right. Just means that you probably got some marketing savvy, which is go ahead, girl. Get your followers, get your subscribers. I ain't mad at you. But this is the problem of the social media age that we're in. That anybody can get a mic, go live, say whatever they want to say, get some followers, and all of a sudden think, oh, snap. Maybe there's some validity to what I'm saying. Maybe what I'm saying is actually on point. Man, oh, wow. To the point where now, you only got 180 subscribers. Well, ain't nobody got to listen to you. Isn't that the problem we have with mega churches, April? How are you any different from the mega church pastor that says, my church is following God because we have 70,000 members? You know what you say, April? You say, well, that may be actually a sign that you're giving candy and your ear tickling. Your 70,000 members don't mean that you faithful and you right and you. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned that P word, because you whipped out your subscribers and my subscribers and almost like you're dismissed. Fine, dismiss me. Good. That's great. That's great. Somebody's listening.
I'm just saying. Either Allie Beth is my sister in the Lord or she's not. My question to you is, if you're my brother in the Lord, why is it that when it comes to adjudicating this matter via the scriptures, you're unable to do so? It's because you cannot win the argument, because the idolatry that sits on the seat of your heart is this blackness, and you need to lay it down at the foot of the cross. I didn't say you have to abandon being black. Do I look like I've abandoned being black? I can't. It's an intrinsic reality that I had no control over.
I wish I had time to talk about blackness, not just as a phenotypical appearance, but as an ideology, I would argue that some non-melanated people are actually more black than some melanated people. I don't have time to get into blackness as an ideology. I don't have time. Just look. There's an old saying: all your skin folk ain't your kin folk. I don't have time to get into that. But what I did want to say is there you are seeing some of the ugliness of reform culture. Presuming to know somebody's heart. Why? Because they say that they do. Listen. If you want to know a little bit more about the Jehovah's Witness organization, talk to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. If you want to know the nitty-gritty of Mormonism, talk to ex-Mormons. Now, some of what they say may be misrepresentation. But a lot of what they say is going to be like, man, I didn't know. I used to be a part of the Reform cabal. Think exactly like that. Now, because I've exited, and now because I've gone on this quest to honor God by doing whatever I can to see that a segment of his universal body flourishes into glory. I thought that when any of the body of Christ flourishes, then it positively impacts the entire body. That's why when you go to the gym, you got chest days, you got leg days. You may just be focusing on your legs, but that is going to benefit your core. That's going to benefit the rest of your body. So here I am, all right, thinking that, hey, the work that I'm doing is actually benefiting this segment of Christ's body. And in doing this work, right, what did Paul say? Paul said, look, I wish that I was accursed for my kinsmen according to the flesh. So he had this burden. And so I have a burden. And this burden has led me to build the ministry that I built and to advocate the way that I advocate. But the Reform cabal says you're an idolater. My salvation has actually been revoked by some of them. I wouldn't do that to April. I wouldn't call April an idolater. I wouldn't call, K-Dub an idolater. I would call him dishonest, but, I wouldn't call Corey Minor an idolater. But the Reform cabal, boy, they have that seer stone. I don't know. Maybe they're in cahoots with Joseph Smith, because they've got that seer stone that allows them to peer into the hearts of individuals and know its state. This is one of the reasons why I said reform culture. I can't tell you how many conversations that I had with people where we anathematize people. Just, oh, they're not saved. Oh, yeah. That person's not saved. That person's not saved. No, they're not saved. It was like a regular for us to pronounce condemnation upon people. So you're getting a little taste of why I no longer identify with reform culture.
What you're mad about is the fact that I don't sit on here glorying in my flesh all the time, and that I want to hold my people accountable because I love us and I know we have the propensity and the capacity to do better if someone just loved us enough to tell us the truth. So I'm not apologizing. I ain't sitting down with you so you'll listen and learn so you can teach me about all the rudiments of the Black church that I miss. I know Black church history, but
remember, She's claiming to know Black church history. Don't forget this.
And then I know y'all really ain't gonna like this, but it's just the fact. The civil rights movement marked a significant turning point where the mission of the church, it started to shift away from making disciples and preaching the gospel to becoming this hub for social activism. And so what we saw during the entire 19th century, churches just allowed their theological convictions to be overshadowed by political concerns, cultural concerns, and financial.
But you know about Black church history. Here's a book that I will recommend as well. It's called The Social Teaching of Black Churches. All right. Wonderful, phenomenal book. Dr. Peter J. Paris came out with this book. This is what he writes on page 11. He says, "It was out of the crucible of racial oppression then that the Black Christian tradition emerged as a non-racist appropriation of the Christian faith." He goes on to say, "Thus, the Black Christian tradition has exercised both priestly and prophetic functions, the former aiding and abetting the race in its capacity to endure the effects of racism, the latter utilizing all available means to effect religious and moral reform in the society at large." Again, anybody that knows even a shred of Black church history knows that what Dr. Paris is writing here is true. And what April is saying is just a mischaracterization. She continues to say, "I'm just stating a point of fact." Double down, April. Double down. Hey, have at it. Go for it. Preferably, your listeners and others will know better.
Who we were is not who we are today. And yes, I have chosen for this to be one key area that I highlight on my platform because it's a problem. Just like I've chosen to highlight the Black abortion rate in the Black community as one of the chief things that I talk about on this platform because it's a problem. And just like I highlight how Black people keep voting for the Democrat Party and how they've allowed these apostate pimp preachers to manipulate them and sell them out to the Democrat Party. Yes, that too is one of the main things that I talk about on this channel. I choose what I want to discuss, and I don't owe you an explanation, nor do I need your permission. So if this commentary seems a little aggressive and less than charitable, it's because you came for me because you can't believe I had the nerve to agree with the white woman publicly and make the Black church look bad as if we ain't doing that all on our own, all by ourselves. So, in case you're confused, let me reiterate it to you again. My people are the ones who do the will of the Father. And I don't care what kind of skin they are wrapped up in, whether they are black, brown, purple, or polka dot. I don't care. I've been delivered and I've released the need, one, to please invisible friends and foes, and two, I do what I do for the cause of Christ and for the sake of the lost and for the sheep who have not been brought into the fold yet. So if that makes you feel some sort of kind of way, your problem is your problem, but I'm not going to make it my problem. And I ain't going back and forth with you. No, you can't come on the platform, and I don't want to come on yours. I'm busy. I got a husband and kids and things to do as well. And so I just wanted to clear the air.
Yeah, so there you have it. That's the response. So much more that I can say. You guys can walk away from this conversation with your own takeaways regarding who here is just wanting people to be just want people to just be Christian. I just want people to just be Christians, right? Like when you talk about the black church, do it in a way that reflects Christian love and charity. If you talk about the black church, do it in a way that doesn't, scattergun and spray this institution that honestly you owe a debt of gratitude. All people owe a debt of gratitude to the way that God has sovereignly used the black church. So again, that is my response. However, I want to end on this note. It is nothing new for white conservatives, particularly professing Christian white conservatives, black conservatives, to disparage the civil rights movement. It's nothing new. It's nothing new for them to disparage the black church. All right. This has been going on ever since the inception of the black church, where people have slandered, maligned. Be interesting to know what April would have said about the black church in the 18th century. Yeah. Whether she'd have been like, oh yeah, you're doing great, advocating for abolition. Be interesting. That's a wonderful thought experiment. I want to show you this clip, and I'm going to come back on the other side and briefly, because I'm tired, and you probably can tell that I'm tired because the motors in my brain are starting to slow down. I want to show you this clip, and I want to come back on the back end of this clip and briefly talk about why I stand where I stand today. Check this out.
There are many good colors, and I worked with some of them, and I liked them, and I like this person that I said works at the lounge over there. But there's the ones that are going to march I don't like, and I can't stand. I got no use for it.
And when your church tells you human rights, and you pay no attention to your church?
I pay attention to my church when they say about human rights. But what the marchers want, they don't want rights. They say they want peaceful coexistence. How can they have peaceful coexistence when there's all this trouble?
Who makes the trouble?
They do, by marching. There's got to be a simpler way.
What simpler way can you think of?
Talks. Just talks.
Well, there are human rights commissions in various towns around Chicago, none in Cicero.
They can make them.
You think they should?
They should. I just think that there has got to be a better way than marches. Because there's no use for them.
If, let's say, 10 or 20 families moved into Cicero, which is a town of 70,000.
They'd get killed.
The reason why I play that is because this was this gentleman's view of civil rights protests. He was mad at the marchers because he felt like didn't solve anything. They were making trouble. And so he got on a microphone and he proceeded to talk bad about not all coloreds, but the civil rights marchers. When the broadcaster asked him about human rights and what his church has to say about human rights, notice he was like, yeah, I believe with human rights, but these marchers are wrong. Yeah, I'm all for human rights. Not once did he say, yeah, my church is helping me to think through human rights. Therefore, I understand why they're marching. Because they are not being afforded human rights. Now, his solution was just to talk about it. But he was a churchgoer who believed he was advocating for human rights. Well, all the while, really all he wanted, at least the marchers, to do was to sit down and take the slow boat. And I want to submit to all of you guys as I sign off that brand of Christianity is not dead. What would cause somebody to physically see? Now we're talking about the civil rights movement now. We're not talking about today where a lot of conservatives say, hey, there's no racism. Everything is great. Look, we're talking about like as Jim Crow is actually a thing, as black people are being marginalized and hosed, Bloody Sunday. What could cause somebody to see how black people are being mistreated? Then black people decide that they're going to protest, which is their right, their First Amendment right to do so. And they say, they're causing trouble. Why aren't the batons causing trouble? Why aren't the restricted signs causing trouble? Colored only signs causing trouble? Why isn't redlining causing trouble? Why are they causing trouble? And then out of the same mouth, you say you believe in human rights. And that you believe your church's teaching on human rights. Was there something wrong with your church's teaching? This brand of Christianity is not dead. Where somebody can say, I'm for human rights and I'm for the good of all people. But boy, the way I feel about these people actually standing up and advocating for themselves betrays what I'm saying about human rights and being for all people. There are people that can believe that they think the best, feel the best for people, when all the while it's a ruse that really masks their own conscious, subconscious, unconscious, conscious biases and blind spots. Coming for the black church demands a response from those that really understand the history of the black church. Talking greasy and slick, misrepresenting the black church demands a response from those of us that really understand God's story as it pertains to the black church. Disparaging the civil rights movement ain't new. Having a Christianity that says, yeah, I believe in human rights, until people actually stand up and advocate and fight for them. That brand of Christianity still lives today. It is up to you to decide who best exemplifies that and who best exemplifies a Christianity that actually believes in human rights. All right, y'all, that's it. We're almost at 2 hours. Been a long response. Appreciate y'all. See y'all next time. Bye-bye.